I run a restaurant in a town far from the city center. I'm 40 years old, single, and run the restaurant with my mom. Originally, I worked as a chef in New York, but 3 years ago, my dad, who ran this restaurant, fell ill. After that incident, I returned home. My dad passed away, and as his only son, I took over the business. At first, I struggled to reproduce my dad's flavor for our regular customers, but once I got the hang of it, it became second nature. While I used to feel the monotony of life in New York, now, I genuinely enjoy every day surrounded by friendly conversations with neighbors and regulars. It seems I prefer this slower pace of life over the hustle and bustle of the big city. Then, one evening, a young mother and daughter in faded clothes entered the restaurant. The young mother looked to be in her early 20s, and her daughter was just a toddler. They were unfamiliar faces in these parts, and on closer inspection, not only were their clothes faded, but they also seemed washed and stained in places. Although a bit suspicious, my mom and I silently escorted them to a table. After briefly glancing at the menu, the young mother ordered a single plate of chicken fried rice. Just one plate. With that thought in mind, I prepared and served the dish. The woman pushed the chicken fried rice to her daughter, saying, "Lucy, you can eat this."
Eat as much as you want.
With delight, the little girl started eating. I thought it might be too much for a child who looked to be around 3 or 4 years old, but she quickly finished the dish. When only one bite remained, the little girl scooped it up with her child-sized fork and said, "Open up, Mom."
It's okay. Lucy, you eat all of it.
Uh-huh. Mom is hungry too, right? You need to eat.
With tears in her eyes, her mother whispered, "Yeah."
Maybe just a bite.
The young mother then accepted the last bite, murmuring, "Delicious," and a single tear rolled down her cheek. I exchanged eye contact with my mom. "Something's off about those two, right?" My mom nodded subtly in agreement. Taking a deep breath, I approached them.
Thank you for coming in today. If you don't mind me asking, aren't you having anything to eat, ma'am?
Is it a rule here that each person has to order their own dish?
No, not at all. As I hesitated on how to proceed, my mom interjected.
You looked like you really enjoyed that chicken fried rice earlier. Aren't you hungry?
It's just,
The woman hesitated, looking distressed.
we don't have much money.
My mom and I exchanged looks. "Sorry if we're prying," my mom said with her usual warm demeanor.
We've been watching, and it just seems like you are in trouble. You're not from around here, and you don't seem like tourists.
The young woman looked even more puzzled. I took a moment to think and told her, "Please wait a moment," then returned to the kitchen. Quickly, I whipped up some spaghetti and set it on the table in front of her. "Please, eat."
But I can't. I really don't have any money.
"Don't worry about the money." My words were firm, and then my mom chimed in.
Honey, you look so worn out. I think you should eat something. Plus, I just have this feeling that we can't let you leave the diner like this.
Before my mom married my dad, she used to work as a counselor at the town hall. That was over 40 years ago, but maybe her instincts from back then kicked in.
Would you mind sharing your story with us?
The gentle expression on the old woman's face and her soft voice, and the steam rising from the freshly made spaghetti on the table. The tension seemed to melt away, and tears streamed down the young woman's face. My mom gently patted her back.
First, let's eat. We can talk afterward.
I quickly wrote clothes for today on a sheet of paper and stuck it to the diner's door.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
The woman said with a nasal voice and began eating warm spaghetti. When she finished, she began her story, seemingly unsure of where to start.
My daughter and I ran away from our home.
The young mother, named Catherine, faced opposition from her father about pursuing higher education when she was in high school. It might not resonate much with me, being a man, but apparently, in rural areas, there still seems to be a belief that women don't need education. Her father believed that even though the number of women entering the workforce has increased, the reality is that the rate of advancement is still low. Catherine, in her rebellious phase, went against his wishes and used the money she'd saved from her part-time job to secretly enroll in a college in New York. However, in New York, she fell in love with a young man and ended up pregnant with his child. Since he was still in college, she couldn't tell him about the pregnancy.
Doing that might just ruin his future.
With that in mind, she decided to give birth and raise the child on her own. She dropped out of college, gave birth, and began working in New York. But her life was not easy with a young child in the house. There were days she had to take off from work to care for her child, and the high cost of living in New York became increasingly tough to bear. Eventually, Catherine realized she couldn't raise her daughter on her own in the city and decided to return to her family home in Nebraska.
I didn't want to go back home, but raising my daughter, Lucy, let's call her Lucy, properly was the most important thing.
Her father was furious when he saw her, having moved to New York on her own accord, and now returning with a child. He scorned both Catherine and Lucy. When my mom asked, "Didn't your mom help you out?" Catherine replied, "My mom always my dad's side. She never really stood up for me, even back in the day." And when Catherine returned home, she found that her mom had gotten deeply involved in some sort of cult.
It was a religion I'd never heard of. My mom seemed to believe that it was thanks to their God that I had returned home. Even when my dad would berate me, she wouldn't say anything to him. But I once saw her fervently praying to some sort of religious talisman, asking it to protect Lucy and me. Maybe in her own way, she believed she was helping us.
After Catherine and Lucy moved back home, her involvement in the cult grew even more profound. Catherine started a part-time job nearby to support them, but most of her earnings were donated to the cult by her mother.
Shortly after I moved to New York, my mom started acting differently. My dad would often tell me, "It's because you didn't listen back then that your mother went crazy."
Unable to bear the situation at home any longer, Catherine, with the little money she had, decided to leave.
I thought living with my parents would have a bad influence on Lucy, so we got on a train to get as far away from them as possible. But Lucy said she was hungry, so we got off here and ended up at this diner. I'm sorry, I didn't plan ahead and spent all our money on the train fare.
You spent everything. So where are you staying tonight?
Upon hearing my mom's question, Catherine looked down, troubled.
You can't sleep on the streets with such a young child. Why don't you stay at our place tonight?
Catherine was taken aback by my mom's offer and initially declined. But when my mom pressed, reminding her of the lack of money and the risk to her daughter, Catherine finally relented, so they ended up staying at our home. That night, while Catherine and Lucy were taking a bath, my mom and I discussed the situation. Do they have nowhere to live? If that's the case, how about letting them stay at our place until they find a home and a job? Said Mom. I don't mind, but we'd be harboring runaways, right? I wonder if that's okay. What if their parents resent us or something?
If it got out that Catherine is here, that might happen. But as harsh as it sounds, there's a luck of the draw when it comes to the family you're born into. Blood ties are hard to break, so running might be the only option.
Mom, who seemed to have glimpsed into many people's family troubles in the past, spoke with weight, and her words resonated with me.
I think she will keep running from now on. If we abandon her now, she'll just start a tough day-to-day life tomorrow. It was supposed to start today, but it would just be delayed by one day.
Imagining that young mother and child lost on the streets. The thought was heart-wrenching. After Lucy had gone to bed, Mom and I asked Catherine if she'd like to live with us for a while. Catherine seemed overwhelmed. "I couldn't possibly impose on you like that," she said. With genuine curiosity, she asked, "Why would you do so much for someone you barely know?" Mom replied with a gentle smile, "It's human nature to want to help someone in trouble, isn't it?"
Just as sudden misfortunes can happen, so can sudden strokes of luck. In life, you have about an equal share of good and bad. So just think of our offer as one of those good moments falling onto you.
Catherine probably knew that even if she left, she might not have a stable life. With a contemplative expression and a voice dripping with gratitude, she said, "Thank you so much." Feeling guilty about doing nothing while staying with us, Catherine helped out at the restaurant and with house chores when she wasn't job or apartment hunting. Catherine, diligent and hardworking, quickly became popular with our customers. As for me, I wished she could stay and work with us forever. About a month later, she finally found a place to live and a job, and it was time for her and Lucy to leave our home. She mentioned her new workplace has a nearby daycare, where Lucy could be looked after.
Thank you so much. I will never forget your kindness.
Catherine said with a smile in front of our house. "It's okay," Mom responded.
All we ask is that you raise Lucy to be a fine young lady.
As Catherine, with tears in her eyes, left with Lucy.
Bye-bye.
The little girl waved and shouted. Mom and I, having grown close to Lucy over the month, sniffled as we waved back. For a while, we kept in touch with Catherine. Although the busy Catherine couldn't always reply, we occasionally updated each other through calls or emails. We always looked forward to seeing photos of Lucy that Catherine would send. Then, about 2 years after Catherine and her daughter left our home, Mom slipped and hurt her back, making it impossible for her to work in the store. With Mom not around, I had to juggle both the kitchen and the dining area. During rush hours, it was tough, and I had put out ads for part-time help. But applicants were hard to come by. Then, one day after lunchtime, the rush had subsided. Catherine visited the restaurant after a 2-year absence.
Hello, David.
Greeted a much taller Lucy, along with a man standing next to Catherine, whom I didn't recognize. Catherine, long time no see.
It's been a while. I'm so sorry for not keeping in touch. I wanted to call before coming over today, but things have been so hectic.
That's all right. It's just great to see you both well. And who's this gentleman? With a somewhat shy smile, Catherine said, "This is my husband."
He's Lucy's biological.
What? Is he? The college student from New York you talked about?
Yes.
Catherine explained that after settling into her new life and gaining some confidence, she took a chance and reached out to Lucy's father, a college student she had met in New York. Luckily, his number hadn't changed, and the call got through. And when he answered the phone, Catherine said she was sorry for disappearing suddenly in the past, that she actually has a child, and due to some circumstances, she can't go back to her hometown and is now raising her daughter on her own. On the phone, He expressed how he had been worried about Catherine after she disappeared. He couldn't change his cell phone number in case she might contact him someday.
We decided to get back together. We even got married. We lived in New York for a while, but
Last month, due to a transfer at his job, they ended up moving to a town close to here.
so I finally settled in after moving yesterday and managed to come here. The restaurant hasn't changed a bit, has it? By the way, how's your mom?
Oh, she hurt her back a while ago and doesn't work here anymore, but she's doing well.
Is that so? That's why.
Catherine began to say something but then looked around the restaurant with warm eyes.
That time when you folks helped me, it made me think that maybe if I shout help, there might be someone out there willing to lend a hand. And so I mustered the courage to reach out to my husband. The happiness I have now, it's all thanks to you and your mom. I truly appreciate it.
She smiled and continued.
I saw the ads outside. If you're short on staff, would you consider hiring me? I want to repay the favor. I'm not sure if this counts as a repayment, but if you hire me, I promise I'll give it my all.
Catherine, I remembered your sincere attitude when she helped out at the store for a month, 2 years ago. Having someone like her on board would be a godsend. Yes, if you join us, it would be like having 100 people. Please, we'd love to have you.
Thank you so much.
Catherine grinned, looking truly happy.